Welcome to the latest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. Today's video features multiple stories from the weekend at Watkins Glen. Of course, we're definitely going to talk about the unbelievably embarrassing blunder by Chase Elliott's team. We also have Denny Hamlin's surprising post-race remarks on the 9 team's mistake and who he blames. Hint, it's not just Alan Gustafson. Plus, we have an intriguing and almost unbelievable update to Hamlin's contract situation. And our last news item is Ty Gibbs once again expressing his displeasure with another driver. Let's start there. Last week, we talked about how Ty Gibbs was not happy with Shane Van Gisbergen after the Cup Series race on the Indy Road Course for a couple of incidents that happened early in the race. On Saturday at Watkins Glen, the 20-year-old got extra seat time competing in the Xfinity Series race, where he started on the pole and was dominant, leading 70 of the 86 laps. However, he didn't lead on the most important lap, and that was the direct result of a move by his longtime rival, Sam Mayer. Mayer and Gibbs have a history. Everyone remembers the fisticuffs at Martinsville last year, when the JGR driver connected with Mayer's face, but did so while failing to remove his own helmet. On Saturday, there were no physical punches thrown, but Gibbs did throw a verbal jab and some shade after the race because he was unhappy with a move by the Junior Motorsports driver going into turn 1 of overtime, where it appears the number 1 car overcooked it, as he admitted after the race, got into Gibbs, and sent him for a spin. In his post-race interview, Gibbs, who finished 17th, took aim at Mayer and his career achievements.
I don't really know how much of a conversation you can, really have with him and in that situation. Like I said, we've been kind of grew up around racing each other. I think he has more starts than I do, and this is his second win. So congratulations to him on the second win, and definitely wish I had got my 13th there.
Rivalries, you gotta love them. Moving on to Sunday's Cup race, and it was a case of deja vu from the week before. Like last week's race, it was short. Unlike last week's race, this was historic. The 90-lap race lasted for an hour and 58 minutes, which is the shortest Cup race running its scheduled distance dating back to a 100-mile race at Hickory in 1971 that lasted for 1 hour and 22 minutes. What's interesting is the race could have been even shorter had it not been for the embarrassing gaffe by the number 9 team late in the race. In case you missed it, Chase Elliott was running well and inside the top 10 all of stage 2, finishing 7th. He was running inside the top 10 in that final stage when a massive self-inflicted mistake ended any chances at victory. With 34 laps remaining, Elliott radioed to his team that his car was sputtering and he'd incredibly run out of gas in turn 2. While showing the car getting pushed back to pit road, the NBC broadcast aired the radio transmission between the driver and crew chief Alan Gustafson, where he told Elliott he had the wrong information. It was a surreal moment to think one of the top teams had made such an egregious miscalculation. Steve Letarte directly placed the blame on Gustafson.
A simple miscommunication. We talk about pressure to make the playoffs, pressure of a season where you've lost your driver for a bunch of races. There are so many details these crew chiefs have to go through. Alan rarely makes a mistake, but this is a mistake by the 9 team.
Unsurprisingly, many fans of the sport's most popular driver took to social media and also blamed the crew chief. However, after the race, Denny Hamlin visited with SiriusXM NASCAR radio reporter Claire B. Lang and offered a surprisingly different take that also suggested the driver was partially responsible. Take a listen.
I can assure you if my crew chief told me to flip my switch and then come, once I flip it, which means I've run out to go 3 more laps, I immediately would have said, well, that's not right. It can't go that far. Like just simple common sense as a driver, it would trigger me to say, well, that's clearly not right. Are you sure? And then it would make the crew chief go back and okay, no, wait a minute, that's not right. I need to hear it before I really comment on it. But it certainly was a big mistake for sure. I'm just really surprised no one caught it. And even, I mean, there's people in a war room. We have to remember that too. There's a war room going on at Hendrick Motorsport. They're hearing all the transmission of the crew chief to the driver. Mm-hmm. Why did not anyone raise their hand and say, hey, that's not right? Because to go one lap on a fuel switch would be a lot at that racetrack.
It's still too early to tell exactly what happened behind the scenes. Gustafson was evasive in his responses when reporters caught up with him and peppered him with questions while walking alone back to the team hauler. But someone is definitely feeling the heat this week at HMS headquarters. Let's go back to Hamlin. While his comments on the Elliott situation were interesting, they didn't even come close to what he had to say about his contract situation and what was reported over the weekend. On Saturday, after qualifying on the pole, Hamlin met with the media where he talked about his qualifying effort, but was also asked about a report on the NBC broadcast talking about him being a free agent. One reporter asked if he intended to be back at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2024.
You know, I intend to for sure. You know, it's what I want. I think it's what Joe wants. But, you know, I think there's just a lot of factors that are out of both of mine and his hands. So, again, it's if I didn't own a team, I don't think it would be done by now. But there's just a lot of different factors that play into it, whether we can get it done or not. So, you know, all you hope is that, you know, this late in the season, everyone's putting their best foot forward to, you know, compromise and come up with the right deal that's good for everyone.
Let's unpack that before we go on to his next quote. First, Hamlin makes it clear that what's happening is out of his and Joe's control. And basically, the holdup is regarding his race team at 2311. Translation, getting a deal done with his race team and Toyota. Now, onto his second and, in my opinion, even more surprising quote.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to insinuate anything for sure, but you know, I think that I'm happy at Joe Gibbs Racing and Joe is happy with me. I think that certainly the Kyle situation last year, Kyle's ask was what his ask, and that he needed, Joe Gibbs needs sufficient funding on the car to do it. From the day one, to give you inside baseball, Joe said, I could have zero sponsorship on your car. It doesn't matter. We want you, and this is what we're going to do. So, it's different in that sense. I know it's easy to draw parallels because you hear a lot of, that I'm saying some things Kyle said, Joe's saying the very similar things, but there's just more factors in play than just us, for sure.
To his credit, Hamlin is at least acknowledging that everything has a look and feel similar to last year with Busch. But he points out how this is different because Gibbs is willing to sign him without sponsorship, unlike Busch. Whether that's true or not, only Hamlin and Gibbs know. But then he returns to his same position about how it's out of his control. That's when NBC's Dustin Long asked him point blank if 2311 will be with Toyota next year.
We're working on it. We certainly are very happy with Toyota. They've been great to me and helped me get this team off the ground. I've won the bulk of my races with their cars, so I feel like it's a partnership that should continue.
Should continue. Not could continue, not will continue, but should continue. Interesting word choice. And that brings us to another nugget that came out over the weekend. According to multiple sources, there were meetings several weeks ago at Michigan between 2311 Racing officials and Ford. Yes, you heard that right. Even last week on the Door Bumper Cleared podcast, Bubba Wallace's spotter Freddie Kraft alluded to something similar about a surprise team talking with Ford. While I know the DBC crew can sometimes go off into the weeds with some pretty wild rumors, it's not hard to believe this might have some truth in it, simply because Kraft is part of that organization. At this point, however, it's all silly season speculation. But it does make you wonder, with Legacy Motor Club moving over to Toyota, Maybe Hamlin sees moving 2311 Racing away from Toyota to Ford as an opportunity. Maybe he buys a third charter and races for his own team, as I mentioned in a video last week was the suggestion of Dale Jr. Or maybe, just maybe, this is all a negotiating tactic by Hamlin with Toyota in getting 2311 to be a higher priority. Who really knows what the play is at this point? All I know is it's interesting and I'll be keeping tabs on it in the coming weeks. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think it's possible Hamlin bolts and takes 2311 Racing to Ford? And what do you think about Elliott's situation and Hamlin's remarks on it? Are the driver and others also partially to blame for not correcting the mistake before it got to the point that it did? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks as always for checking out the latest video and hope you have a great rest of your day.